Welcome to episode 32 of the NORMLESS podcast with Matt Ox Orford.
With the stroke you had recently,
Yeah,
2016,
yeah,
how has that influenced you?
definitely a shock to the system. It definitely affected the memory
Yeah,
and just overdoing things with obviously recovering from the stroke with the brain. Obviously, um, doing too much, it kind of knocked you around a little bit, and just the fatigue.
yep,
The post from the stroke, the fatigue that I went through, and still to this day, if I do way too much, overstimulate, or concentrate, or just anything physical that I overdo, you might just have a fatigue effect for maybe the following day or two, and yeah, it's just something, I guess, muscle that's been damaged, that you learn to, I guess, you can rehab, and it's a visual thing you can see. I kind of put it in that perspective that I was always carrying some kind of niggle and I could always keep on top of it. But when it becomes a brain and you look fine, you
yeah,
feel fine, people might not even notice that you've had a stroke. I know that my speech, my memory, just little things,
yeah,
and it takes me a little bit. Like if I get someone will tell a story, or it'll have to just trigger me just to remember that little detail of a story or of a past event that has happened. Those
yeah.
are all things I notice. But yeah, it's definitely something I'm still getting used to, but I've come a long way, and I've learned a lot. I guess a lot more about patience.
Yeah.
Some things you don't have control over that you have to get used to, and yeah, that's definitely a huge learning curve.
So for those listening to this episode, we intended to get Matt Ballon on and Desi Hasler. I just said to you before we jumped on, it was quite ambitious thinking I'd get both of them on at 11 a.m. But Matt's up there with the Broncos at the moment. And what I will intend to do for those that are listening is try and get those guys on at a later time throughout the year or next year whenever they're available. Hopefully either individually or together. I think would be great to get an insight more into the coaching mindset that, to achieve greatness and success in professional sport. But having you on today, Matty, it's really exciting for me. I know growing up, we spoke on the phone, last week. When you're growing up and you look at players in the rugby league or whatever sport you follow, they're almost like superheroes for you. So, and I remember myself growing up, I was a big Manly fan. I went to the 2007, 2008, 2011 grand finals. And, back in that time, yourself, Snake, Mad Eye, Jamie Lyon, all those guys were like superheroes to me. And to be, sitting down now talking about it, it's really hopefully give us a really good insight into your story, but also what it takes to achieve success. But for me personally, it's also, uh, I'm really grateful for this opportunity to chat to you. So thanks for coming on.
No, I appreciate the offer, and I guess to be able to try and hook up with Des and also Matty Ballon. Maybe future reference, if there's some money involved with Des, you'll definitely get him on. Keep that in mind. So, uh,
Andre said they were both tight asses. We had Andre on the last episode. He said Desi and Matt, mate, you never get any money out of them. That Matt would
yeah,
take the food whenever it was a team lunch or something. He'd get all the leftovers.
it's brilliant. Yeah, on the money for sure. Yeah, definitely. Even Steve Mendy put him on that list as well. Just say we had a game of golf and just say we're doing, close to the pin, par three or whatever it was, and Jamie Lyon, it was $2 or $5, and he'll chase you for weeks. So he was brilliant. No wonder he's doing so well these days. No, but no, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm happy to jump on here and share my story, and if I can sort of have a bit of fun, and yeah, it'll be sort of good to reminisce some of those old stories and some of those achievements we achieved together.
Yeah, I guess we'll really give that stroke a test out now, won't we? We sort of
We
see
will.
it. We even had a few hurdles at the start with the intro, but
Oh yes.
you look at Desi now up with the Titans and what he's been through with Manly, um, for good reason. He's probably really got his work cut out for him at the moment. But for yourself as well, you've been appointed the Manly's under-16 development coach. Can you tell us a little bit about the role you're in at the moment, and I guess what you're learning coming out of a career in professional football, what you're now learning about being a coach?
I think what I've kind of taken from my playing days into coaching is, I guess I'm kind of a little bit, I guess, what do I say? Not gifted, but fortunate enough being a halfback and a captain. Sort of know what it takes to get the best out of the players when you're on the field. You kind of have to learn how each player ticks and how those guys react to certain parts, whether it's an error or whether, we're against a clock or an injury. Kind of know how to get those guys back up. And as a halfback, and I guess as a general, I kind of realise I can take those attributes and put that into coaching. And I'm still really big. I take from my Melbourne Storm days under Bellamy and Des, all the principles and all the foundations and fundamental parts of the game are so important. They're boring. They're so minor, but our catch, our pass, our certain things in defensive things, having the right foot up, just little things part of the game go a long way and becomes muscle memory. And I'm huge on all those parts of the game and just doing the basics. Just doing repetitive. And just my job, part of the Eagles, is that pathways, and also to instill in. Obviously, I was away from the game for a fair amount of time, but just to, as a coach, my job is to make these guys better and to develop and be ready for the next grade. Winning along the way is a bonus, but that's not my objective. My objective is to make these kids grow and understand that there's a part of the game, development-wise, that they need to understand to achieve their goals. They need to do all those little things really, really, really good and make them understand talent will only take them so far. So to change their work ethic and understand that, they're so young and still to enjoy the game that we play. Teach them a little bit about structure, but also they've got a culture there at Manly now that we're starting to get back, where they've got some ex-players involved and around the club and sort of instill that winning culture again. And I think that's where the club's starting to head. Obviously, it's got a long way to go, but they're starting to put some things in place that I can see there's a bite through to ahead. So that's my kind of role at the moment. Also, I do a little bit of recruitment and scouting on the Central Coast, which is where I'm from. There's so much raw talent up here. So that's kind of keeps me involved. And it's really good to see some of these kids, the work you do put in and the way they develop and go on to, say, the kids last year I had, Manly ended up signing 11 of those kids out of that 13 starting team for a contract for Matthews. So there's some really good kids there and they're starting to develop within. And a lot of those kids are locals as well from the Northern Beaches, which is a huge, huge thing for Manly themselves.
Fantastic strike rate, 11 out of 13. That's good.
It's not bad.
Yeah. Now, you just mentioned there you're with Craig Bellamy after you moved from the Northern Eagles to the Storm in around 2000, early 2000, 2001. So you had Craig Bellamy there as coach, and then you went to the Seagulls. You had Des, Craig Bellamy, and your time at the Raiders, I think, was only short time, but were you with Ricky Stewart?
No, I was with David Ferner.
David Ferner.
Yeah.
At the time you had some great coaches that mentored you. So between Bellamy and Des, what were some of the things you took from both of them that they did well, and how have you applied that, I guess, in your role at the moment?
I'd probably say, let's do, I guess, not a comparison, but Craig Bellamy is, well, they both work tirelessly. The work they do put in is just next level. They're there before everybody. Bellamy would always train before the team would get in. God, those guys I don't think would get too much sleep which I understand that's Des's, he has 20 odd coffees a day. Now I understand why. But no, they both were, I guess they would take it personally if they missed something in prepping for a game. So they wouldn't leave any rock unturned. Meticulous in their video work, but both, and especially Bellamy, very big on the basics and the fundamental parts of the game. Catch, pass, very simple. He's very simple, but they'll break it right down, and he would just be repetitive. And Des was the same, but they would both do a lot of teamwork under fatigue, obviously game related, and that's where I think the skill came into it, and everything became sort of triggered to me. That's, the more game related stuff you do between skills and fitness would be, it just kind of reinforced that all these skills and the little parts we do, the basics under fatigue, it just became muscle memory, and they both are really big on it. Craig Bellamy was a very serious man. There was no messing about, and he'd definitely let you know in the video room if you did mess up. So there's nowhere to hide. And he didn't treat anybody different, whether you're Cameron Smith, anyone, Billy Slater, anybody, or just a new kid playing his first game. Everyone was treated the same. No rules were any different. With Desi was a little bit more quirky, but he would still keep you on your toes. He would, you weren't sure. He'd walk around really grumpy or look grumpy, but then he'd come in and he'd be the first one to crack a joke. So it was just they really they knew how to get the best, but keep everybody on their toes and understand we had a job to do. And they're both really good at man management and getting the best out of their players and understanding how the group sort of ticked, and the style of play they wanted to play. They knew they had a vision, and they stuck to what worked for them. And we all understood what they wanted, and I guess that's how they become the best coaches in the game, right?
And I guess having Des with a background in teaching as well, and Bellamy, as you said, getting there before all the players arrive for training and doing his own training, setting those standards. And did you think it sort of helped you rise to higher standards just working with these caliber of individuals? I mean, in 2004, even in a squad where you say you got Billy Slater, Cameron Smith, and these guys, Player of the Year for the Storm in 2004. How important was it for you in the early stages of your career to be in an environment like this, and how did this set you up for your playing days with Manly and being captain then and starting to lead the group?
I think it played a massive role. I think just taking from what their work ethic was and how they instilled that in their players, I think that sort of set us up for, I guess, the things we achieved. And the standard that Melbourne Storm had always set was always high. Even, let me go back to Craig Bellamy. He earned the respect from the players, not just by being the coach, but would always do a time trial at the start of the season. And it would be, I think it was a 5K run around the Botanical Gardens there at Melbourne. That was the very first thing. And our fastest were guys like Robbie Ross, Matt Geyer, Billy Slater, and some of those guys, they were doing it in ridiculous times, like sort of low 14-minute time trials. And who's right next to him? Bellamy's right there. Yeah. So, I was way back. I was probably in the 16, 17-minute marks at my best. So that's where I guess his work ethic and the way he trained, he expected if he could do that, everybody else is going to be on the same page. And so everyone kind of got Craig earned his respect really early. And everybody knows how Des was the same back in his day. He would train tirelessly, and the hours he put in with his game and when he played everybody knew that his fitness was next level. And his standard also having, I guess, we had some really, really, really good trainers as well. Head of Donny Sims, and also Melbourne, we had Alex Corvo, who went on to train some of the Australian teams and things like that. So those kind of the teams they have around them and assistant coaches, I think, done a lot. And that kind of thing taught me that you need to have a really good team around you and a supporting crew, and everyone to be on the same page and understand what their coaching role was. And that's what I kind of do now. I'm fortunate enough to have Jamie Brewer as one of my assistants, and he's been great. And some of those things kind of, even his time, because he sort of, we lapsed, we didn't get to play with each other, but he obviously made the 2011 grand final and played with blokes like Cherry, and some of those things he got to experience. I let him come in and, do his style of coaching, and he's really, really methodical too in the things he does, and he's very diligent in the way he delivers. He gets his message across really well, and I think I'm still working that out as well. And I want to get better at that. Is just getting your message across really clearly to the guys and make sure they know exactly what you're saying and make it understandable for kids at that age. I'm sure if we said it, some of the things we do say with first graders, they'll understand it, but you've got to tone it right down for these guys. And I think it's still evolving, coaching, in the way they do things these days, break things down even more into little groups such as left edge, right edge, and middles and halves. And yeah, it's broken right down. So I'm very much watching how first grade do it and trying to learn and pick the good things out of their brains and how they do things to suit my coaching style.
Yeah, there are those stories about Des on the sand dunes when he was in his playing days, and apparently had these monster quadriceps as well. So, yeah, I guess one of the things I want to ask you from this new crop of kids coming through, what are you seeing? What's different to when you were a young junior coming through the ranks? What are you seeing now? And I guess what are your, again, key learnings from what you see?
The kids are so much bigger.
Yeah.
100%. I'm not sure what the difference is. They're so much more, I guess, they're athletic as well. The kids to these days, I guess, when we were coming through, we didn't have as many sports or playing as many sports. These kids are so versatile and so good at, say, basketball, like touch, OzTag, rugby union. They're amazing. Like they do so much, and they're all on scholarships. So the kids are in high demand. Probably not as much. I would say not as natural footballers as what they used to have. I guess kids coming through. So we I try and teach the kids to play within structure, but I don't want to take away just playing what they see, playing some football, and let them have their natural skill and just learn and develop in their own time. I never want to take that out and never want to make them guys be robots and get around the park, because they've all got it in them. And for a prime example, I had Bo Alexander, which is Brandy Alexander's son.
Yeah, right.
He was part of the development crew last year, and he was just a natural runner of the game, so pretty much like his dad. Honest to God, they're so much alike. He's awesome at finding space, but creating space for someone else, he needs to work on. So little parts of that game, yeah, and he knew that. He knows that, but he's a really good kid, and yeah, I just say they're just a whole lot bigger. They all stand above me anyway, and I'm not the biggest, but they're huge kids. They are huge kids.
Yeah. Something in the chicken, caged eggs.
Yeah, something. I don't know. Yeah, no, they're all great kids and they're coachable. So
yeah.
I guess that was my only question mark in coming back to coach, is understanding that huge gap in the generation, how they were going to be, but their manners, they're really respectful and they're so coachable. So it makes it so much more enjoyable for me.
Yeah, I was listening to a segment on the Sunday Footy Show they had on, I think it was last week, or this last, say, week or so, Turn It Up with Nathan Cleary, and they had Freddie, Billy Slater, and Andrew Johns there, and they were kind of talking about in the younger ranks at the moment, and Nathan was saying he didn't agree with the whole having set plays too much in the younger ages, sort of focusing more on numbers and draw and pass and that kind of thing, and eyes up football, kind of looking at where you can get an overlap. Is that something that you're kind of very adamant on teaching at the moment with your
100%? Yeah, 1,000%. We do that on a weekly basis, and that's the simple thing of just setting little scenarios up, and it's just about eyes up football and just weighing it up and just putting them under pressure. And some of that would be under some conditioning drills, and then coming back and doing the same drill again, and just simple 3-on-2s, 4-on-3s, and little games that they've got to sort of work out the numbers, and just developing that sense of, I guess, decision of passing and working out what's best at the right time. And yeah, it's all part of development. So we try and do exactly that.
One of the other things they were talking about was social media and how that's kind of influenced a lot. You see a lot of the players now coming in after the sheds. And I imagine in 2008, and Donny and Andre said, you guys used to love to party.
Yeah.
When you win, you could party really hard, but then you'd be straight back into it come Monday, back into the training. But that kind of 10 to 15-minute period after a big win when you come off and you'd be celebrating as a team, saying it's kind of dying because you guys are just jumping back on their phone, seeing what the fans are saying. And what are you kind of teaching the young kids? Are you even got any messaging there about social media and how to manage their time on their technology or phones and that kind of thing?
Geez, it's a good point. I just obviously coming back in the shed and just trying to enjoy. I try and get them to be present,
Yep.
enjoy the present moment. Look, once we're out of that, they can do what they want, but I don't, I don't really enforce anything about social media. But when they're in my kind of time and within the teams and other people that volunteer their time, I want them to sort of be in the present moment, and that's the same at training as well. And that's all I ask the guys. I know it's just massive a part of our society now, and I guess
Yeah.
those guys will always do what they want outside of our. So I don't try and sort of mold that too much. Just in the sheds, I just try and be, yeah, especially those guys, and within that team environment, I kind of get them just to really embrace it because it's not always going to be there. Like some of these guys, kind of one or two of these guys may play first grade, may, and the other guys won't. So just even in the team sport, just embrace what they got and learn and
Yeah.
make the most of it. And that's pretty much my message. I kind of do to the kids, and I kind of leave it at that. Really.
I was surprised how long they spent talking on it, but it really is a big factor in today's day and age with sport. But there's also so many endorsement sponsorship opportunities, connecting with other athletes internationally and that kind of thing, which I imagine you didn't have, throughout a lot of your career,
Yeah.
those opportunities. So it's like you're dangling a carrot and, it's kind of like, will you focus on your football and getting those things right? Or do you go chase those lucrative sponsorship opportunities with Adidas and that kind of thing? But yeah,
It is a fine line. Exactly. I know exactly what you're saying. Um, Oh, it is hard. But some of those, like majority of the like the guys that play first grade these days, a lot of them do have young families.
yep,
So kind of wonder, are they jumping on just to check within the family, where they're going to sort of be
yeah,
meeting,
yeah,
meeting their dad, or are they getting into the sheds? Are they so forth? But then you get some of the kids obviously just made first grade and they are doing those kind of things and checking whether I know that I had limited opportunity to do some things with Red Bull and things, and a lot of it was part of the camera and had to be certain things, and the Red Bull cans had to be in vision and stuff like that, and
yeah,
Adidas, certain things I got with apparel and boots. But these days, yeah, it's gone to the next level, and all the best for these kids because they've got a short window of this opportunity
yeah.
to
Make
play this game and make this money. And what I've learned, I wish we did well to invest and do that, but when you finish, that cash flow is not there anymore. So I guess these guys, if they're smart enough and they can capitalize on this opportunity they do have and invest and make sure they are set for after footy, because I know our bodies and the things you go through and the injuries and the soreness, yeah, it takes its toll. And I've learned that the hard way, but I wouldn't change it for anything. But yeah, I wish I had that kind of money when we were back at our days. But I'm sure every generation of footballer will say the same thing. Yeah,
It's
look,
only going to grow and grow. Like I was keen to ask Matty Ballon about Reece Walsh, and
yeah,
he's like a social media megastar now. He's on TikTok and all sorts, and he's got massive follow. Well, I think he's the most followed NRL player at the moment. But
yeah, yeah,
just the way that things are changing in that respect, like he's got all these endorsement opportunities. I think one rugby league player is sponsored by Ralph Lauren. I think it might even be him or there's another player. So there's
yeah.
all these interesting like contracts and sponsorship endorsement opportunities happening, which I think is exciting times for a lot of the kids coming through. But as talking to you, and if I said to Maddie and Desi and the other coaches, I'd say, yeah, it's becoming more of a challenge, I'd imagine, to keep players focused on their footy as much. But if they can get the best of both worlds, then it's really exciting times for a lot of these athletes.
Oh, 1,000%. You know what? I'd love to know, like, two ends of the spectrum. Say, like a younger coach, say, let's say, I don't know, Shane Flanagan or someone even
Yeah.
younger, and then Howard Wayne Bennett kind of,
Yeah,
those
yeah.
kind of things. You know, I'd love to know how. Just say Brad Arthur. What does he kind of do? Or just say the Warriors, probably the coach. He's probably the best one because he done such a great role last year and got those guys, performing out of their skin. But I'd love to know, and that's how my brain ticks now, is like, how would they handle it and how would they approach it and address it? They're the things, I guess, because it's huge. And I guess I know myself, I don't think I'd want to, I guess, limit the guys to earn their money, but I'd want to make sure that it's done within, I guess, outside of those areas that I really need their attention, and we need to make sure that they still know they've got the job ahead. And I think these days the sports become so professional that the guys know, most of the guys can handle that, and I guess the expectations around football with sponsorships, media commitments, and anything that has anything tied to revenue, they kind of, I guess, and most of their sports management these days kind of, obviously they're going to make it work because they get a piece of the pie as well, right? So it's in their best interest to make sure the clubs can understand and make sure they can sort of let the guys, do the best they can.
It's a ever evolving world. It's so funny. Like you go on Instagram now, social media, and there's people altering their bodies, and there's the designer babies now, and all sorts of.
Yeah.
But like you see Tom Trebojevic now, ambassador for Sports Key, which is like they do like one-off testing sessions for young adolescents and teens to get a profile of where their athletic strengths and weaknesses might lie, and this informs parents on which sports they might be best suited to. So in the early days, they can make a more informed decision about which sports they should take up. So it's really interesting, isn't it? Like seeing how much opportunity is available now for not
That's
only
huge.
parents and kids. Yeah.
Swear to God, I've seen a documentary with that actually, with an American family. I guess driving up and down the freeway and going to training, I'll listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of things, and also when I'm at home, when I do get the TV between the three kids, I'll watch some documentaries. But I've seen something along the lines where there's an American family and they had 4 children, and it was just they didn't want to do all like different sports for all kids. It just wouldn't work. So the dad did some kind of testing like that. I think they start off with gymnastics with their 4 children, and then they went to some other sport. Anyway, long story short, their 4 kids end up going into soccer, and he worked out the percentage of their kids making it. Like if they're all in the same sport, like they're going to have more of a chance of one of their kids making professional, like in that sport. It was just like the way the parent had thought about it, and I guess not being able to, I guess, take one kid here and whatever and invest all their time into that sport, and give their kid every chance. That was the best sport they were at. So they got like a 38% chance of making it. And that's what they actually did. And I think 2 of the kids actually made it. So the theory kind of worked out. And that's kind of what you said Tom's kind of doing, the testing and all that kind of stuff. That's what he actually did. So have a parent like that, I don't think I could ever be like that. And test the kid and go, well, no, mate, you're not going to be a footballer. I want to push you into golf because that's what you test well in. But yeah, so because I know what it's like. My parents never actually forced us or pushed us into any sport, and I've got 2 brothers and a sister. And honest, my younger brother, he's probably way more talented than what I am, but he just didn't have the, I guess, dedication. He's more laid back, and he could have made it easy if he really wanted to, but he was too cruisy and really didn't want to put in the hard work. So, but yeah, that's just the way it works out, I guess.
So throughout your time when you were playing for the Seagulls, you were living in Gosford, Central Coast, and driving over to the Northern Beaches every
No, no
training?
way. I lived on the Northern Beaches in Freshwater, actually,
Beautiful. That's where I grew up, mate.
right opposite
Grew
the
up-
Harbord Hilton on Charles Street. There,
Oh yeah, yeah.
it's awesome. I wish I never sold that place, to be
Best
honest.
place to live. Hey, just go down for a swim and
It's the
coffee
best.
at Freshy Chicken. Get a burger from
It's
Freshy
the best.
Chicken, and so good.
Portuguese, yep.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny that, like, the chicken shop, like we all used to meet there. Like we got Chocky who lived down the road in Freshie and also Bieber. And we knew the chicken shop, his name was Spiro. And really
Yeah,
nice guy, got to know him.
he was with
And,
the Devils, right? When
sorry?
I used to play for the Harbord Devils. I think Spiro was
Yes.
Chris's dad, right?
Maybe, I'm not sure. But anyway, oh geez, maybe he was, but I don't think he runs it anymore. I think he ended up having
Yeah,
some health issues, but obviously he done really well. And I had a garage. Anyway, long story short, he had like this really expensive old Ford, was it GTHO Phase 3 or something? It
yeah,
was probably worth 900,000 or $1 million. And he always said, "Look, can I just park it in your garage? So, it's close to, I can take for a drive on the weekend." So, yeah, no worries. You sure you want to leave it? Being close to the beach.
yeah.
Like, yeah, don't worry about it, mate. It's fine. Like, but yeah, he'd just take it and actually just drive it. But like a lot of those people, they're collectors' items, right? But
Yeah.
he'd just enjoy it and just drive for what it was. And but no, we'll do that. And obviously Snake was there. Like obviously back in those days, I was part of the single crew, so we'd sort of go out a couple of nights a week for dinner, like all the single crew, like Josh Perry, myself, and but every Tuesday night it would always be poker at Steve Menzies' place.
Yeah,
So
I think Andre
yeah, it
mentioned that.
was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So growing up, you were playing for the Gosford Townies, I
Yeah,
understand. It's like your junior club.
yeah.
And then you were North Sydney Bears junior as well. And this was before we were talking about this before we came on, but the Northern Eagles. So when they had the merger between the North Sydney Bears and the Sea Eagles, um, which was in the early days before you joined the Storm. Talk us through, I guess, those early years, making a start and then moving down to Melbourne. How much of a shake-up was that in your life, and what did you learn about yourself as a person, and what attributes did you kind of have to develop? And
Oh, geez. Well, obviously with North Sydney, I was parked behind someone called Jason Taylor that never missed a game in nearly his whole career, and was such a vital part of their success with his goal kicking, and just guiding the guys around. So, kind of sort of in my, I think it was close to my jersey flag or sort of those days. I was kind of tossing up whether I needed to make a change and go to a new club to get an opportunity. Um, But I hung in there, luckily, and that merge did happen, and I sort of got a chance when I think it was Kieran Dempsey went up to first grade, and I think who was it? I think Peter Sharp with Northern Eagle. I
yeah,
can't remember. Yeah. Anyway, he gave me a start, and Jason Taylor was towards the back of his career. Um, and then that opened up some really big opportunities. And one of those came. I played, I think, 11 games, and then but Northern Eagles signed Brett Kamali from Melbourne, and ended up getting a call from Noddy and sort of saying, he wanted to part me in the halves and stay and play 5'8". And but I really thought about those things, and when I was going through the process, I remember writing down a list of the pros and cons from both clubs, like me moving away and like the clubs I had interest from, which was Storm. One of those was Storm, and I really wanted to move. If I was going to go to a club, I wanted to move and be right there and sort of be amongst it and not travel like I had to. And I guess make everything focused around footy and becoming that first grade player. And that's all I ever dreamt of being 11 years old. So that's why I made the decision to go, because I wanted to actually learn the trait of a halfback in first grade. And I didn't want to be, I guess, the second string to Noddy. I wanted to learn, my way, and it was just an awesome opportunity to go down there. And see, they had so many class players, like I said before, Robbie Ross at fullback, Scott Hill at 5'8", front row, Robbie Kearns, Rodney Howe, Richard Swain at 9. Some of the back rowers were like Matty Ruhr, and yeah, I was blessed with some of their team and had Chris Anderson as coach. So I thought, well, geez, why not? And get out of your comfort zone and make a huge change. And had a coastie down there, Danny Williams, who we all would know back in those days.
Yeah.
And he was away on tour with, I think, Ireland, and he gave his house. I stayed at his place for about 2 or 3 weeks while he was away, pre-season training, and until I found and got settled. But I got down there, and once I knew like what a full pre-season was about, I knew that my body had to develop. I think I was only, God, 70 odd kilos my first grade pre-season. The training they put into me and tried to put weight on, and just the physical demands of training day in, day out were something that really sort of took me straight away. But like, I was loving it. Everything that was exposed to me and everything that I seen, that being down at Melbourne, it was like a second family. And I think that's how they built their culture, because no one was from Melbourne. Everyone, so we kind of, outside of football, we're pretty much hanging with each other 24/7. And that's how you become so successful. And everyone had that bond that they were, their second family, brothers and stuff like that. So I really just needed to work on becoming bigger and stronger. And I had I guess, being down AFL country, I got to experience and be under some guidance of some AFL and learn how to kick that football. And I guess that's what really, really, I guess I put my time into, was trying to perfect that game, that part of my game. And that's what we worked on hugely.
Was that employed by Craig Bellamy? He does a lot of that, I think, with like, you saw Israel Folau going to
Yeah,
AFL. There was a lot of Melbourne players that were doing that kind of AFL kicking training.
it was, yeah. It was a bit of a vice versa, like just a mutual thing. So we would help those guys with some of their defense. Those guys would help us with kicking and a lot of the catches. They do a lot of the AFL stuff, marking and just where to be. I guess those guys concentrate on the percentages of where that ball's going to come down. So you kind of got a knowledge of, because their game's a 360 game, where to be majority of the time, and just where to kick, things like that. Just sort of just gave you a bit of a insight. I guess you're always learning. They always thought outside the square about how to develop and how to keep us learning. So it was awesome by those coaches. And I think I had a few before Craig Bellamy, but once he came in, it was like his way or the highway. But look, I believed in everything he did, and the way he did it was he got the best. But he always showed faith in the players, so they weren't scared like to make a mistake. But Craig was very big on, as long as you're practicing what you're gonna or what you want to do in the game at training, put the time in. He did not have an objection of putting a new play on or a trick shot with myself or Billy Slater. As long as we were putting the time in at training, you could do it. There's no dramas. So he had structured play, but eyes up footy as well. So that's where I kind of learnt that. But yeah, definitely just to be physical and make sure, being a smaller body, that I could, my defense and my contact was there, and I was playing my part on the field in that, and not letting anyone down, because that was hugely a focus point on Bellamy, was the defense side of it, things.
When you said you were a lot smaller, 70 kilos or so, 169 centimeters tall, you got the nickname Ox during your playing days. And I think the idea around that was that you were one of the strongest players in the gym, I guess, like in terms of relative strength. So not absolute strength, but kilo for kilo, pound for pound kind of strength in the gym. Was that something you're always familiar with? I guess being a lot more like kind of stocky, you're very good with your compound movements and getting strong on the bench press, squat, deadlift. So those key movements in the gym to kind of build that base level of strength for football.
Yeah, it wasn't something I was conscious of, but I just knew that was what I had to do to compete against those bigger bodies, and the collisions we were going to get, and especially, I guess, my style of play. Like, I wanted to always take that line on and threaten the line, and to do that against those guys, you had to be strong and fast, and I enjoyed that part of the game too. I guess it was always, I guess short levers were always easy
Yeah.
for me, like
Yeah.
some of those big guys, didn't like those kind of things, they got a lot more range of movement, but no, it definitely played a huge part in my game and my success of becoming that, and obviously getting that nickname. And I guess I just made sure I kept on top of that. But there's other parts of the game that sort of helped out as well. So
Did you win the strength assessments tests? Like, was it what kind of?
I think so. Back in the day, there would have been a couple of times where within that, I guess the body, your body weight to ratio of lifting weights and things like that would have been very close. But
Yep.
yeah, I think back in the day, geez, I'm not sure. Donnie would have remembered this.
Donnie would remember you.
Maybe it was I don't know, it was 150 or 155 on the bench or something like that. But
Yeah.
like I said, always put it down to the short levers. I didn't have to lift it too far. So,
It's big numbers for 70 to 80 kilo body weight. It's
Yeah.
almost two times body weight, which is big
yeah,
number.
but no, but I just wanted to make sure that I held my own out there, and
Yeah.
that was my main goal.
Yeah.
I didn't respect my body too much. I went out there and saw what's all out there, right? And got a few injuries from it, but I guess that's where I kind of maybe earned some of the guys' respect as well. If I'm going to put my body on the line, it's as a halfback, and when you're a captain, I guess if you do that for your teammates, they're going to jump behind you too, right? So that was my theory.
And so, Matty, we'll get into more about your success at the Sea Eagles in just a moment. But if we kind of talk a bit more about your career and the trajectory of your career, saying there, you threw your body on the line, but we were talking about the early days
Yep.
of an Eagles, you experienced that kind of lack of success, bottom of the table, coming up into your years with the Storm and the Sea Eagles, you went right to the top. You won a premiership with the Sea Eagles. You won accolades, which we'll talk about, Dally M Player of the Year, Halfback of the Year. But then, your time came and you went to the Raiders, experienced some groin injuries there, and then you went overseas to the Super League and you had your
Yep.
shoulder injury.
Yep.
Throwing your body on the line, going 100 miles an hour as you're getting a bit older, you found that it kind of caught up with you a little bit, and then that was when you retired from football. But so, what were the big highlights in that career? Riding the wave, as we said, you had 3 appearances for City Origin
Yep.
in the early 2000s as well. What were some of the biggest highlights?
Oh, geez. Some of them. Oh, geez. I'd have to say, obviously, God, you still remember your first grade debut with the Northern Eagles against Tigers at Leichhardt. That's still pretty special. And then obviously winning the grand final, being in the grand final, let alone winning one. I learned a lot from that first grand final as a player and as a team and as a group. What we needed to do for that 08 to make sure that things were going to change and flip that table. That was a huge lesson, and I think I took the most out of that loss more than anything in my whole career. Winning Dally M was something that I never thought I'd expect or get. Obviously, always strive to be the best player and that best, like in your position. I had some handy halves at that time, such as Andrew Johns, Thurston, Kamali. God, list goes on. Brent Sherwin. There were so many. And then obviously the World Club Challenge. That was huge. I'd have to say the grand final. Like that's every player's dream to win that grand final. And then as soon as you win that grand final, you think that's enough, but no, you just want more. Like you want more and more. And I guess you become so much more disappointed when you don't live up to those expectations, and you don't get another grand final. Like I think I played my whole career, and we had one joint premiership when I was like maybe 10 or 11, and then you get to play a few grand finals and win one. So it's pretty special when you look back on that. I think the personal ones are amazing, but you don't go out there and like it's not on your mind to you're going to go out and play the best you can for yourself to win that award. It's like I want to win this premiership and do special things with this group because we invest so much together. And I've always been about team first. So I'm sure my family and everyone else around me is like so proud that I actually did that and also got the Daily M and halfback and stuff like that, which I had to be bloody dragged on that Daily M's. I didn't want to go. I wasn't going. So I was forced to kind of go. I didn't even have a suit ready, and I'm thinking, I don't really want to go to these things. I was never big on like the I guess the occasions of those award nights and things. But yeah, I knew I was kind of up there, but but I'd never thought. I just thought, oh, I don't really want to go. I want to focus on the grand final, like kind of thing, and stuff like that. And yeah,
Well, I
but
think it's incredible feat considering the caliber of players also you had in the team. You think about Brett Stewart and
yes,
like you look at the Storm and Billy Slater and Cameron Smith. They were the guys you beat in the Dally M you pipped them right at the end. I think you got 24 points and you were 2 points past Billy Slater.
yeah,
Um, so, looking at the Seagulls, though, at that time, Brett Stewart, yourself, you had a whole host of other Australian players at the time. I think Chock was in the Australian team. Obviously, we don't see too many front rowers or second rowers getting Dally M medals. It's more skewed towards, the back line, whether
yeah,
it be the halfbacks or the fullbacks and that kind of thing. Um, but in saying that, like you're in a very successful team, the caliber of player in that team at the time was so high that and in the competition with the Storm as well. Like it wasn't like you had any leg up or anything. Like you were against the best of the best, really, and you achieved what not many players do in this game. Like if you think about the number of players that have achieved a Dally M, what is it?
when you put it like that, you do realise that it's no mean feat, but
So there's
like,
been 20 players. I don't see what this
yeah,
is.
wow,
Yeah, so since 1980
yep,
to what's this 2017, there was 20 players.
wow,
So there's probably a few more on top of that now, but
yep,
to be included in
yeah,
that, and then you
no,
think again, then the Immortals as well. But mate,
yeah,
you're on the Normless podcast for a reason, and let's get into some chat about that really magical era for the Sea Eagles. So when we look at 2008, that finals campaign, looking at the 2008 finals campaign was probably the most convincing series of wins we've ever seen. That's arguable. Some people would probably say, different eras, different times, different teams.
yeah,
But in my opinion, based on what I've seen, the most convincing finals campaign I've seen in the years. So you played 3 matches against St. George, which was the qualifier, then the Warriors in the preliminary after you had your week off,
yep,
and then the Storm in the grand final. So you're for and against. You had 110 points scored in
yep,
those three games, and you only had 12 points scored against you. And
yeah,
you basically you rinsed all 3 of those
yeah.
teams and destroyed all of them.
Yeah.
Um,
That's next
talk-
level.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
when you say that. Oh God, I reckon I truly believe this is from the 2007 grand final and the huge disappointment of how we performed and how we changed. Look, it comes back to as well. Leading into that first grand final, we changed our weekly schedule and how we trained and prepared. And I just think once we got into that grand final, we forgot about there was still a game to be played. And I think that was a huge lesson for myself as well, that I did not change one thing in the 2008 grand final or like leading into that grand final, that final series. I treated every game the same and prepared exactly how we would if it was just in season. And that was even keeping my family away and just like booking them accommodation somewhere else, not staying at my place, and just kept everything so routine. And I don't know, the confidence I had going into that final series was I could I could just sense the hunger and determination that we weren't going to be like messed with. Like the boys had so much fire in their belly from that previous year, and that, I don't know, it becomes a feeling that we're never going to be beat, even though that scoreline against the Storm in that grand final didn't really blow out until probably, I don't know, 20 minutes to go in that game. Like, it was still tight, but I never had one doubt that we're going to lose that game. That's the kind of, I guess, across the board, that's how everyone was performing, and no one was going to let you down. That's how I felt. And even though not many people know this, that 2008 grand final and the whole season, pretty much this is how good Desi is and our medical staff, that I tore my groin it would have been April, maybe May that year. So I had my torn groin the whole year, which was completely torn, and there was no way of going back. I needed surgery, and no one knew about this. Only the team themselves. But I was getting needled locally to train, and then to play, and then at halftime, right up until the grand final. And that's hence sometimes the doc would hit a nerve or something in my groin, and it would be a bit jelly. So my goal kicking was off. And that's hence why I thought, I'm not going to put this down and let my ego in the way and keep kicking. I let Jamie Lyon and Stevie Matai take that for the grand final, because it just obviously hit that first half, the nerve, and it was a bit funny. But yeah, I played that whole season. Obviously, you think about that, and you're playing with my right groin torn, and still to win a Daly M in the grand final was pretty incredible. And I guess the medical staff there actually managed it really well. And still to this day, there's not many people that would know. And I made a deal with Desi and the medical staff. As long as we got through that season, I got 2 weeks in Bali to go surfing. After the grand final, I'd come back and get that surgery done. And I had 11 weeks to get ready for that World Club Challenge. So that was the deal. But I was never going to miss that season, go and get surgery, especially as a halfback and a skipper, and potentially win a grand final to get surgery done and let that opportunity slip. So, yeah, I guess that was something that we sort of made a decision on. But no, it's just that, like I said, that semi-final season was like those guys had enough there that we're never going to get beat. And I felt that the whole way. So that's no arrogance to the opposition. It's just something that we learned from that last year in 07, that we wanted to go that step further and nothing was going to stop us.
I was reliving, as I said, some of the footage from that 2008. There was that video that Luke Williamson and Beaver put together, which recapped all the.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny, like those guys introducing each match. And
Yeah.
but like from round one, 5 minutes in, first round against the Sharks, Josh Perry just flew out of the line and absolutely smashed Ben Ross, like head clash, blood everywhere. Chalk was like slapping him on the back, screaming at him. You were there, picked up the ball on the ground. Like everyone was yelling, just going nuts.
Yeah.
3 minutes later, Matty Ballin went out of dummy half, threw it to the left. Anthony Watmo got the ball and scored under the sticks. Is the first 8 minutes of the first game.
Yeah.
Imagine that really set the tone. Like you could see there was this like burning desire for you guys after that loss to get back into the season, 2008, and really get into it. Despite you guys losing the first 2 games, you could see that real intensity in your defense and your attack. I thought that game you kind of got robbed a little bit with the Sharks. It was like 16-10, but there was a try which was disallowed for a penalty.
Yes.
And so, yeah, there's a few little calls that could have gone either way. But, yeah, I think you really saw it from the outset, just how determined you guys were to make a dent in the premiership, that year after coming up second in 2007.
Yeah, 1,000%. I reckon every player would have felt the same as what I did. And that was pretty much nothing was going to stop us like repeating or going one better that year. And that was from, like you said, from pre-season. Everyone had that focus, and there was no whinging, nothing. Everyone just wanted to become better, and we knew we had to be at our best to beat the Storm. And there was that rivalry, right, against us and those guys. Because for myself too, I guess, and Steve Bell, we came from the Storm, and it was kind of a bit of you want to beat the team you come from. So that was always at my forefront. And I know how competitive Craig Bellamy was and how much video he'd do against me as well. And he'll try and find different things to expose me, but I would have done exactly the same to him and worked out some little traits that, their players didn't like as much as, especially Billy Slater, how close we were. I knew some of the things that he couldn't, he wasn't at his best if he did things a certain way. But it had that extra little, I guess, little fire to kind of beat those guys because that's old teammates, right? So you got to get the one up on those guys, and there was always a huge battle, and that went on for years and years, and still is till this day. But I guess going back on the team we had, I guess I was blessed to, like, with some of I had Brett Stewart, obviously I had Billy Slater, Matty Ballin, who's now Queensland assistant, and Cameron Smith. I had guys in that spine around me. Like, I had the best of the best, right? So that made my game go to that next level as well, because those guys were on, like, I guess we could read each other's minds, and that's what great players do together. And Snakey was one of those guys, and Beaver was another, just a natural footballer, and it just made those combinations, like, I guess, really fire for your team. So it was awesome just to achieve what we did with that group of players at the Seagulls.
Yeah, no, you had great service from Smithy and Ballin, and you had Brett often trailing up the middle with that banana kick, which we're talking about. You guys had an awesome combination, as I said. But that Storm rivalry, there was that other game at Brookvale Oval where you got the drop goal at the end to win the game. The Battle of Brookvale, where there was the big punch up. But in this 2008 year, we talked about those first two games you lost. I think it was the Sharks, and then there was another game you lost that second round too. You went on a 4-game winning streak after that, but then you came up against the Storm. They flattened us 26-0. And then it was almost like it was slowly gaining on them, because it was like 26-0 in that first game. Then the second game you came up against them, it was much tighter. There was like a six point difference, but you still lost. Seagulls basically won minor premiership towards the end, but then the Storm pipped you right at the end in a points differential right in the last game they played, final game of the year, which was a bit of a dampener. But do you think that the fact that you came up against the Storm twice, and each time maybe you learnt something new about how you could expose some of those weaknesses, that helped you really tackle them in the end?
Yeah, 100%. We learned. I guess we had blokes like Jamie Lyon. We had so much, I guess, football knowledge within that group that we picked those guys and learned from. I guess those losses were just like all that together really just put a plan in for that grand final. It just was bulletproof. And like you said, I think that was a huge, huge part of it, was playing those guys twice that season. And just picking little bits here and there that we learnt, that we sort of seen there was a bit of a obviously ongoing trend that we could obviously expose. And those guys were so good at doing their review and, picking teams apart. And we definitely changed a couple of things leading into that grand final, and only for that grand final as well. So they didn't have much time to actually watch some video and didn't expect what was happening. And majority of that, if you see the grand final, Jamie Lyon done majority of the long distance kicking, and I stayed on the left because of where Billy Slater would sit, and he'd kind of sit on me, expecting me to kick. And we just changed it. And certain parts of the field he didn't like to come out of, being the right to left as much. And we just kind of it was just some of those little things were really beneficial for us going forward. And it wasn't just myself or Desi, it was really just some other players picking up on things, and it was just a team effort to put those together and go, well, let's do it. And we all sort of all amongst it. And we kind of all agreed too that 2007, we changed our weekly schedule not to do that. And we just kept it, we trained it Narrabeen, kept everything the same, other than we had to go to the breakfast and whatnot, but we didn't go and it was only just the kickers. We went out to obviously the stadium and do some kicking with the backs. And I think that might have helped, because some of those kicks that I did for Robbo, the grubbers and stuff like that, they were like, it was a fast track. So compared to Narrabeen and Brookie, it was probably beneficial that we actually did that, but we didn't take the whole team. So we kept everything as normal as possible, and I think that really was beneficial for the whole team going into that game.
And so 42-0 against the Roosters in round 13. You're sitting on the top of the ladder after that with 4 and against, went straight to the top. As you said, came up against the Storm. One of the incidents we didn't mention was that Crocker had a punch up with Brent Kite. This was kind of after 2007 when Crocker took out Brett Stewart under the high
Yeah.
ball.
Yep.
And so, again, that really intensifies that relationship, doesn't it, between the two teams? You really wanted to. I used to hate Crocker. I know you don't hate the person though. It's like that's the beauty of football, isn't it? It's more the character on the field, and like you look at Ennis and Gallen and how they present themselves on the field. But yeah, and so the minor premiership went to the Storm after they smashed the Bunnies in that last game before the end of the year, before the end of the season, which took them above us. So they won minor premiership. But the good thing about that was that, as we said, you won that Dalian medal, halfback player of the year. And then funnily enough, I was gonna throw this at Matt a bit of a job, but he won that Men of League sexiest player of the year.
Who did?
Matty Ballon.
Oh, I did, yes.
Yeah. Like the sexiest man in league award.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was funny to see like a fresh faced,
Matty.
like with his shirt off with the ball and everything. Like
Yeah. I tell you what, Matty Ballon was one of the hardest trainers, and obviously outside of first grade footy, he still had he's still a personal
PT
trainer.
business. Yeah.
Like to have the energy and be able to do that and be like first grade training, it's like, God, credit to Matty. I don't know, and obviously probably had a young family back then too, right? So yeah, he was it was all work when he had that rig that he had, so he always kept tidy, so kept that fit, and obviously that's how he got that sexiest man.
Well, looking back on it, so that combination you have with Brett Stewart, there was one instance I was talking about with Andre where you did that banana kick back inside for Brett Stewart against the Tigers, and Brett got it and scored under the post. But even in 2008, that round 7 win against the Bulldogs, same thing. There was that banana kick. Round 10, Robinson scored against the Cowboys. I think he did like a bomb and he went through and scored. Brett Stewart against the Dragons in the qualifying final, same thing again. Round 19 against the Eels, I think Brett did that flick pass out the back. So there was like just incredible to watch. Talk us through, was that just you guys knowing each other and playing enough football with each other, or was this something that you really worked on hard at training?
No, definitely both. Worked hard at training, but I think when it came to, I guess, Brett and myself, we'd do lots of video and understand whether the fullback's over chasing and the other half and the other side's not coming back in, and there's no other fullback, and would work on these things. But obviously, just knowing each other too, and myself and Robbo being on the left side, we had a great combination with just a look or a little signal, would know each other, and he'd be on board. If I seen something, he would know exactly what it was, and I guess the confidence to do that with each other. I think that's the time and the effort we do, I guess, on the training park, and then also with some video stuff as well to expose that. And obviously, I got to do a lot of work to be able to pull that off and have the right kick and everything to go perfectly. For Snake to be on the spot rather than where a million things could go wrong, being too short, too long, the angle wrong, and things like that. So, bit of luck would play in any of that, all that as well. I think like you've got to have a portion of luck, but I think a lot of the hard work did go in that year and all the previous years. Like done thousands of hours of kicking together and doing little trick shots like that, and to come off as much as it did in that 08, I didn't realise there's that many kicks and that many things, and I think some of those passes were just like, honestly, just Snake's natural ability and just our guys to realise that we had some freakish guys that could do things, not just ready. And I think that comes down to coaching as well. I guess those guys be ready for anything. No one's ever just there, and anything can happen. And that's the way we trained, we played, and to come off like they did is just I guess the confidence level was so high, so it sort of showed. where our ability was. When it's high like that, you could do anything. So testament to those guys for that '08 season.
So when you finished up with the Seagulls and you went to Bradford and then
Yep.
you came back to the Raiders, I know you had a few issues. So firstly, it was, I think, groin and then shoulder
Yep.
or vice versa.
Yep.
And they really hampered your back end of your career. But was there also I guess, the issue of moving away from the Seagulls and the Storm, where you had those really strong connections with Brett Stewart or Billy Slater, and that spine
Yep.
kind of hampered the back end of your career as well, just not having that?
100%. Yeah, I think a mixture of all the above. To be honest, like you, I was so gifted to have that team, and obviously Brett Stewart and the connections we worked on. I guess it's really hard to find and I guess relive and work on new combinations. Like I had a great 5'8", Terry Pisa, but he was coming back from injury as well with those Canberra options. But what I worked out pretty quickly in that career was the medical team and how the coaching team. I guess I tore my groin down in Canberra, and I guess how it was managed was so different to Manly. And I guess I don't know if there's any right way or wrong way, but obviously I'd done a whole lot more running. Then I ended up tearing the other side, so I'd torn both sides. So
Right.
once again, not many people would have known that, but how I was managed with that injury, I was never going to get on the park, and I guess that's sort of comes back to how they kind of manage. And unfortunately, I only managed 6 games, but I was still injured within those 6 games, which was pretty disappointing because I thought Canberra had such a young team that had so much potential. So I was really excited to go down and work with like Jared Croker and those guys. And we had, God, who was a fullback? What was his name?
Dugan? Is it
Josh
Dugan?
Dugan. Yeah. So guys like that, and I could see we could strike up a combination, but it was just we had a really good preseason. It was only towards the
Blake Ferguson as well, I think.
Blake Ferguson. Yeah, he sort of came on a little bit. Yeah, no, he came in a little bit later, I think. But we had a gun forward pack, outside backs. There was obviously enough players there for us to do really well. Obviously Campo got injured again and done his knee, and which was unfortunate. But yeah, it was only the last week of preseason we're doing some opposed, and that's when I tore the groin. So just really bad timing, and
Yeah.
it was the same groin I tore from '08. So just the luck had run out, unfortunately. But obviously to find those combinations, you don't realise how lucky you are. And if I had my time over again, I would have loved to stay rather than venture overseas. But I seen the opportunity to go overseas, and look, Manly were in a really good position too because they had Kieran Foran coming through and Daly Cherry Evans. And I had an opportunity to go over and I actually kind of think about my future and set up a retirement fund. And kind of, but you don't really understand that once you leave the country, all those relationships and networks that you, I guess, worked on and discovered and made friendships and everything, you kind of lose those really quickly.
Yeah.
And those combinations are really hard to find. So you got to stick with them while you can. That's the lesson I've learned. And if I had my time over, I probably wouldn't have done. I probably would have been. But would those players behind me still be at Manly if I was there? I don't know. Those guys might have got fussed. They were ready to sort of take in the first grade, and I took all that into account as well. And I thought, well, when I came to the Seagulls and where we've gone to, I've left it in a better place, and I've achieved all the things I've achieved. So I've kind of done my role. It was my time to move on. I didn't want that team to break up, majority of it. And Kieran Foran just made his first grade debut that season, and Cherry was more than ready. So I thought they were right to do their next, start their next chapter, and it was their time kind of thing. So
You didn't have too many games though in the Super League and Canberra. You're just injured a lot of the time, so
yeah,
you probably finished it the right way. I
yeah.
think. You look at Cherry Evans at four, and did you play much of a hand in their, I guess, development in the early days? How much of them did you see?
Yeah, a fair bit. We worked. especially with those guys playing in the 20s, and Foz coming up to first grade, would always be amongst training and doing stuff with those guys. But I'd always ask those guys when they came in at half time or whatever, what's the field doing? What's the wind doing? Give some tips, and those guys would, I'd pick their brains. And they're just both natural footballers. They knew exactly what they were doing. We had a good relationship. And
So you got an idea of what they were doing in the match before, like the under
yeah,
match, and that
yeah,
guide you kind of with the conditions and
yeah, I'd definitely have a chat and say, like, what's going on? What's your thoughts? What's the wind doing? And yeah, they're both smart enough to tell me, and that sort of made my decision about how we're going to approach the game. So yeah, I've definitely had that relationship. They're both really good kids coming through, and I think you've seen, and you can still see that in their football. There's competitors, right? And they're leaders of the game. So
when you look at, say, the Panthers now, they've gone like on a streak that we haven't seen for a long time, especially with the salary cap at the moment, the way it is. But they've failed in their 2 attempts with the World Club Challenge, I think against St Helens. I think for a long time, people have had the perspective that NRL is on a different level to the Super League. It's kind of like you play a lot of the elite players when they finish their career in the NRL, they head over to England. It's not as in the intensity is a little bit less, or there's not that same media scrutiny. What was it like back when you with the Seagulls went over for the World Club Challenge, and then when you eventually went over to play for Bradford, versus what you're seeing now at the moment?
just with the way, the style of play or the ability, I guess their skill level. I guess when we went over there, God, Leeds were, I think, they were at the top of their game, and they had plenty of strike power across the park. But I guess I think for the NRL, I think we break down teams a little bit differently. There's a lot of, I guess, structured play where in the UK it's like they love to throw the ball around when they can, and there's a lot of eyes up footy and ab league footy. So it's just 2 different styles. I don't think things are better than one comp's better than the other. So I think it's just total different coaching, and the way they approach their games over there is so different. I know that we work on a lot of defense wins games over here, and over there it's more so let's work on the attack, let's score more, not focus on let's limit them from scoring. It's more about the attack. So it's just 2 different, I guess, visions, and the way they look at the game is just different. And maybe they're just, I guess, a little bit more, I don't know, I guess, adventurous in the way they play than us. And
What about the dead ball line?
oh,
You look
yeah,
at like you watch it on TV and there's like 5 meters, and I think is that so in the NRL? Would you imagine that kicking, halfbacks 5'8" kicking is a lot more? There's a lot more focus around
100%.
kicking into the in goal and chasing versus
Yeah,
kick tries or scores or tries scored off kicks versus in England where the chances of you landing it in the
yeah.
in ball in the in goal is just so slim that really inhibits the ability of the halfback and 5'8" to kind of capitalize on last tackle options and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. You make a good point there. It's I know that when I went over, there wasn't a great deal of focus on that particular thing, and working with those trick plays or things with the King game, and myself as Brett and I had over here, and I had it with Billy Slater as well. But no, that's definitely a point. No, I think that's why I guess they catch some of these Aussie teams out, because they're a lot better at running the ball and
Yeah.
just, I guess, living by the sword, don't they? They two-edged sword. They play with the footy, and it's not really broken down, and they're not getting those repeat sets. They either go down there and they score, or they don't, and that's the way they just play, and that's the way they coach. So that's definitely something. Yeah, you definitely make a good point with.
When it comes to Desi, Andre and I spoke a little bit about that when he lost his marbles against the Eagles.
Yeah.
I think it was around, he said 2010, I can't remember what round it was, but against the Eels, Desi slammed the door fell off, and there was a lot of conjecture around that. You know, I think there was someone sent a bill to Manly to pay for the door. Manly said, you know, we don't want any more security cameras in the change rooms anymore, you know,
Yeah.
invading our privacy and that kind of thing. And then um, quite funny to look at now, but imagine at the time, Desi probably wouldn't have liked that coming up on Nine News,
No.
PM9 News. But was there any instances you remember fondly? I think that year, 2008, round 11, you had a nail-biting loss against the Dragons, and Desi, you could see some almighty spray. I think this was um, Jamie Soward kicked the goal to win the game right at the end,
Oh, yeah.
by 2 points.
Yeah.
And there was an almighty spray from Desi at the end there. Was there any in particular sprays you remember where Desi lost his marbles, and maybe some that were specific instances that were maybe aimed at you as a halfback or captain?
Uh, Geez, there would have been a few, but like every time Desi had his massive sprays, like there was many, don't get me wrong. And it's some aimed at me, some aimed at the whole team. But I guess having that group together, um, I guess as senior players, you kind of know if you've kind of effed up or not, or you're not doing what you're meant to, or we've gone away from what we've been training to be like. But mate, his head, the way how red it got, and he was going to burst a valve somewhere, and the hair, when he flicks his hair through, and he's got that hand gesture, and not stress you enough, like the change of tone, and oh mate, he walks, stalks around, he kicks. Oh mate, some of them I thought he would have broken his foot in some of those eskies the way he kicked them. It was brilliant, but no one would just say boo, and then but yeah, he's just passionate, right? So that was a talking point the whole time, like, and some of the boys would do some of the impressions of Desi when he was angry. It was brilliant, but he's God, he got very very intense. If we weren't doing things, and he would let you know. So same again in video. I'm doing a review the next Tuesday or whatever, and if we've done something wrong, or God, he'd just erupt. He was just like a volcano, but there was no warning. So
The funny thing is, so we were talking about this off air, but his brother Danny Hasler, who unfortunately has passed away, he used to teach me in primary school, so middle school. When I was at St Augustine's College, they had middle school, year 5 and 6, before you went into year 7, high
yeah,
school. But his brother Danny Hasler was teaching me, and whenever someone would get in trouble, same thing. His face would go volcano red, absolutely screaming, roaring, like at the top of his voice. And it was a thing. Everyone who was on that top level of that building, when Danny was going off, you could hear him right down the other side of the corridor, just absolutely like
yeah,
roaring, screaming.
yeah,
Um, and my mate Jack at the time, there was a time when we were in an assembly, and one kid, when we stand up to sing the national anthem, one kid's pulled out the chair from under Jack's, and then when he went to sit down, he like fell on the floor. And so this is Danny's son, right?
yeah.
And you can imagine if someone did that to your son at school. And then we went back to the quadrangle for recess, and it was like Armageddon. It was, it was. So I can only imagine though. Like
Yeah.
it runs in the family, I think. So they were both teachers and um, used to disciplining people. But look at the results they got, from
But off out of that, as we spoke about, like Des is so quietly spoken.
yeah,
Like, away from that, like
yeah.
having a conversation with him, or going for coffee, or like we're doing some video, just myself and him. Like he's the most polite, gentle, softly spoken guy you'd ever meet, right?
It's interesting. It's like he's introverted, but when he needs to get a result,
Yeah,
he brings himself up into that extroversion,
yeah,
like a teaching or
yeah,
directing the play. Yeah.
100%. He does. Obviously, he must do a lot of. He's a smart man, and he's different in the way he thinks, and I'd say he's probably a little bit. Oh, I think he must do a lot of, I guess, not reviewing, but studies on how to get the best out of people, and maybe he's just his teaching days, and that's the thing. Like, if it needs that change of tone, or he can read the group really well, and I think that, like you said, may come back to those teaching days. But that's talent of a coach, right? And the record speaks for itself. He's done so successful. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
I guess transitioning as a player into now your role in coaching and that kind of thing. I guess what aspects, and we've talked a little bit about this, but what aspects of coaching are you finding the most challenging, but also in terms of like personal fulfillment? Being able to work with younger athletes, understanding what you've been able to achieve with your career. How much does that benefit you personally, being able to help these younger athletes kind of achieve their goals? Since you're 11, you've always wanted to do this.
Yep.
Knowing that they have similar goals and ambitions, how fulfilling is that?
It's very fulfilling. It's as a coach, I guess, seeing these guys listen and learn, and then obviously grow as players and individuals, and as people as well, and appreciate the time you do put in. It actually does give you a huge fulfillment. And then these guys to go on and get contracts, and it's only the start of their career, but just to get them to that level, and develop. And obviously they're going to continue to develop over time, but you've kind of obviously done a little bit of teaching and developing in that short phase of your coaching career. But I've always wanted to get into coaching. Even when I played towards the end of my career, I kind of knew that, I always used to do as much video review and sort of break down the game and things like that. And I thought I had something to offer. And I really get a lot of benefit and a lot of joy out of doing some positional stuff as well with the young halves. And even one day, hopefully, I do get up to grade, but helping those guys break down and just open the key a little bit and sort of see from a ex-player's point of view as coach what I used to look at and break things down and indicators to show why and when, and this is how we do it and the reasoning why. Gives me some, to see a play come off or something that you've taught someone is really rewarding, and it gives you some, I guess, some confidence in that you do have some coaching ability, and you can give those guys some direction and not just be better footballers, but better human beings and grow as young men. That's part of my job, and that's what I take out of it. I can get those guys to mature and understand what they've got ahead of them and the opportunity they do have, and still enjoy the ride as well. That's part of it, because in the blink of an eye, it's kind of gone. But yeah, there's huge parts of it. But I just kind of make sure that I reinforce that there's a lot of sacrifices that do come along with making your dream come true. And at the same time, I just want to make that they, I guess, talent will only take you so far. And these kids are so talented in so many sports, and they're still only so young, but they just need to make a choice. Just if they do make a choice, make sure they enjoy what they do, and no one's going to force them to do that. But if they enjoy what they do, they're going to want to do it, and they're going to want to invest and learn. And that's where it makes coaches' jobs so much easier, because they're coachable and they're keen to learn. So they're not going to go against you or think you're crazy and you're past your use by date or anything like that. They're going to listen and learn. They're very respectful. So it's good, because they make you grow as a coach as well. I'm still learning, and how best to get a message across and how that person reacts to certain things. And if I can pick something up, it's a bonus as coaching. So I'm still learning.
What kind of strategies throughout your time, I guess now what you're doing at the moment, but also as a player, have you used to kind of motivate or improve the morale of the team?
Geez, I really just make sure at a young age that it's not do or die. Like, it's not
Right.
not the end of the day if they do make a mistake. I guess I try and give the advice that the more mistakes we make now, the better we're going to be when we're older, because we've learned something. That's where I kind of turn the negative into a positive and just reinforce that we learned something. It's a lesson in life, and we're only going to grow if we learn these lessons now. And it's going to make us better for the next time around. And the day we stop learning, we shouldn't be playing the game. So keep making those mistakes. I want you to keep learning. That's what I encourage. Don't stop playing footy. Like, I want you to play what you see. If you make the wrong choice, that's a lesson. Okay, you're going to learn for next time, and you're going to have these. They're going to have these over the same scenarios thousands, millions of times. So they're going to get it right at some stage. So that's where I just try and reinforce it. We've got so much time ahead. Just learn from these little lessons, and we grow as players and as people, and we make good choices from there on. That's about it.
Can you walk us through the process for how you go about scouting players, and also, how you prepare for upcoming matches as a professional NRL player?
So for scouting young players, I guess, I look for qualities that, for an example, we went to a game last year, and we got tipped there was a couple of centres in the centre that we wanted to look at, and a fullback that we're looking at. And there's just a kid that played lock, I think he was, or a back row. We weren't even looking at this kid, and the kid just stood out. Just had the natural ability. He had the aggression but the skill he had, like he could play with the ball and offload and just things like that. This kid just, without even going up there on purpose to look for a kid like this, and his name was Cam Mackey from the Central Coast, and he's got so much ability. We ended up actually recruiting him, and the Roosters were after him, and thankfully he came to us. But I think he's on the right road. He's got a big future. Stuff like that. I just look for kids that are naturally gifted, and kind of see, even with some kids that want to do those little 1%ers, the effort they do have. I think I look at those guys as well, but I'm still learning what it takes to have the eye for recruitment. But yeah, definitely, when you do coach, when kids have the ability, if they've got something to go a little bit further, that's for sure. I guess the second part of the question was how I prepare for a game.
Yeah.
I was really, I guess, not rigid, but I was very routine based. I'd always, the start of the week, it doesn't matter what part of the week, I'd always want to get in there being the first player, like as early as I could. And the only guys that would be there before me would be Desi or the physio, and always get in. And Desi, I'd be in the physio room actually, just doing the maintenance part of the body, always getting something done. And Desi would be doing video, and he'd come and grab me and, hey, come and have a look at this. And I'd be a sounding board, and we'd look at some stuff we're going to look at that day, or is it too late to change and do some change of game plan with the forwards? And so, no, I wouldn't go changing just yet, Desi, or yeah, I think that's a great idea. But I'll prepare the same each week. I'll just try and get in there as early as possible, but especially for a game, just say we had a game on a Saturday night and we're doing a team run the Friday night before, I would always do the same captain's run, but I'd sort of stay there. Everyone was sort of gone, and I'd have either the video guy or one of the trainers stay there, and I'd be doing my goal kicking routine. But just before I'd start that, I'd always get their phone and order my pasta on the way home. So all of that, the same chicken pasta from the same place at Brookie. Then do your 30 minutes of goal kicking and whatnot, and finish with some drop goals and whatnot, and then go home and do that. But I'd always be if we had a
creature of habit.
Yeah, I'd always have a sleep during the day. I was a big sleeper. So we had our roomies that we'd always have. I had Stephen Bell, and we would have the same routine, so
yeah,
it was good. But I was very rigid. I'd say rigid in my routine, especially in season.
Andre said you'd occupy a bed first thing Monday morning. Had a laugh about that.
For sure. Mate, I was like elastic band. Like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, I'd do all this work and you'd be right for the game, and I'd be back to the square one again. I'd just start all over every week. Just maintain there'd always be some soft tissue, or, my glutes or my groins or my hips would be tight. And yeah, get in nice and early, be first up there so I can use Dre, because he'd be a hard man to get hold of with all the boys. So no, it was just I had so much maintenance I had to do to stay on top of my body. I was just highly strung all the time. So
multiple groins, the shoulder, and then
yeah,
the stroke as well. You've been through
yeah,
a lot towards this last sort of
yeah.
decade of your life. What's ahead for Matt Orford? Do you have any like long-term goals you're sort of working towards at the moment? What can
I'd
we
love to
expect?
be. No, I'd love to be back in, like, in footy, in a full-time capacity. I think I've got plenty to offer, and I guess that's where my passion is too. I've always known that. I sort of took away a bit of time from football, obviously with the stroke and
Yep.
hip replacement, but obviously now being back in 2 years into my coaching, I do have the I guess the passion that I want to develop, and I'd love to be full time with football, and whether it's positional or whether it's being assistant or any kind of role or multiple roles, I'd love to do that. Just I think it's just I'm always watching the game and trying to break it down, and I guess that's where my time is and focus. And if I can help in any part and develop young kids as well, I guess that's where I get so much enjoyment, and seeing these guys develop as young men is always rewarding. So that's the long term plan. We'll see. Being a dad at the moment, it's time consuming. It's busy. It's always learning. So I've got a girl and two boys, so that's fun. Yeah, but definitely football in some capacity would be great.
Yeah, well, thanks for sitting down today, Matt. I really appreciate your time, and it's nice for me being a Manly fan. You'll probably see if you went through this podcast how biased I am towards the Seagulls, but yeah, it's a real privilege for me considering I went to those grand finals. I was a really big supporter of yours in my younger days. So yeah, thanks for your time, and hopefully we get Matty Ballin and
For
Des on
sure.
later the year.
No,
And
I appreciate it. Thank you for the invite. I'll definitely have a look, but nothing wrong with being a Manly supporter, mate. I'm good between.
before we go, buddy, I'll just get you to grab one song you'd add to the NORMLESS playlist. So we got like a playlist collaborative playlist on Spotify.
Yes.
Anyone can go and find that NORMLESS playlist on Spotify. But if you want to add, is there a song you listen to throughout your heyday in the Seagull?
Oh, in my heyday. Oh, geez. Let's
Eagle
go
Rock,
back in the
Eagle
day
Rock
when
remastered 2000.
hey.
Eagle Rock remastered 2000.
No, let's go. Have you already got what's the Eminem one when it's prior to the game? I remember playing that heaps.
Lose Yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was always a good pump up
Good
song.
one.
That was pretty good.
Do you want to sing a little bit for the listeners?
No way. No way. I'm hopeless. Can't dance, can't sing.
Mate, you can play football though. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Really
No,
appreciate it.
had a ball. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bring
Matty.
back some memories.